My name is Robert McAtee, and I'm an actor. I've also been a musician and singer-songwriter since I was a teenager. In 2005, I started collaborating on a creative journey with actress and writer Molly Leland. Molly and I were writing a screenplay about a terrorist attack that had brought two people together. We worked on this for several months, when our writing was interrupted by the opportunity for me to perform a 2-hour set of my songs at a festival in Montana. On October 10th, we returned to Los Angeles to resume work on the script, but I realized I had lost interest. So I expressed to Molly one day at Starbucks, I can't move on with this, and of course she was pissed, and she actually got up and left. And later in the day, we actually came up with the idea for Crumbs, so it all worked out.
And then we wrote the original script in about a month.
We were very inspired and felt strongly that we needed to shoot it ourselves, immediately. The story called for shooting in the winter in Kentucky, New Jersey, New York, and Vermont. There were a few people that we knew that had expressed interest in helping out financially for a low-budget project. And when writing, we kept budget in mind.
But like 40 locations, so it was a friend of, friends, family, friends of friends, friends of family, friends of coworkers. We had a restaurant that closed down early just for us. I mean, so many people just helped out. It was really amazing.
I spent about 48 hours thoroughly going through the screenplay and coming up with a proposed budget and shooting schedule. It's like identifying the pieces of a 10,000-piece puzzle, and then coming up with directions on how to put them together. We sent the script to our potential investors, and to my old friend, Kentucky-based Tony Feltner, who we would need to come on as editor and fellow producer. When writing, I had never intended to direct the movie, but it became very clear very quickly that the torch was in my hand and I needed to run with it. The challenge of that was enormously exciting to me. The schedule called for 15 shooting days over a 19-day period starting January 2006. We would need to travel to Kentucky, Indiana, New Jersey, New York, and Vermont. We had about a month and a half to prepare, and we had to find all the pieces of the puzzle: wardrobe, props, actors. Well, Molly and I had written the two main roles for ourselves, obviously, but we needed to do some additional casting right away. We cast Jeff Swarthout, Andrew Welsh, and Elizabeth Ann Weiss, all Los Angeles-based actors that we would need to fly to Louisville, Kentucky. On a short trip back east in December, Molly cast a handful of smaller roles that we would need for the New Jersey portion of the shoot. Meanwhile, I was busy for weeks creating storyboards in order to have a clear blueprint of the mountainous tasks ahead of me. On New Year's Day 2006, Molly Leland, cinematographer Shan Raquel, and I flew from Los Angeles to Louisville, Kentucky, armed with the Canon XL2 mini DV camera, a couple of microphones, and a few suitcases full of wardrobe and props. We were now what most would call crazy. Tony, along with his wife Sarah, had been busy preparing for the significant 8-day Louisville shoot. After one day of prep, we started shooting officially January 3rd. We had planned on finding some volunteers along the trip to help out on the set. Some days we had a couple of people, other days we had none. We were all wearing several hats. Things were off to a good start. But Tony ran into a problem. At the end of the second day,
and I wasn't sleeping a lot, so to this day, I don't know how much of it was personal, how much of it was Trailer Crumbs.
We obviously were very concerned about Tony, but as they say, the show must go on. So down a producer, we continued with the difficult night shoot after closing time at a restaurant. This location was to pose as 3 different settings in the film, and we'd have until dawn to finish. About 36 hours later, Tony was back in the game. Overall, the Kentucky shoot was going very well. The 8th day of shooting had been reserved for the characters of Calvin and Wendy to be walking around the city. It was pouring down rain, and we were really disappointed. But later, we'd realized that it was a blessing in disguise because the foggy grayness allowed us to capture some magical shots of Louisville. Speaking of the color gray, this is what we thought of Kentucky winters when riding. We designed Calvin's wardrobe in grays and browns for this portion of the movie. Wendy's wardrobe really defined her as well. We ultimately finished right on schedule, and the exhausting adventure was over. Now, it was time for Tony to edit the film. Over the next several months, Molly and I would fly out to Louisville many times to work with Tony in the editing room. During this time period, I also started writing and recording songs for the soundtrack. We found that together, we were an excellent creative team. We faced the challenge of putting forth the best that we could do with the obstacles that come along with a micro-budget independent feature film. And we were committed to thinking outside of the box. Eventually, we had a clear picture of what we had, what parts of the story worked, what parts didn't. But we also realized that the movie was creating itself, almost like a robot that now had feelings. We determined that we needed to write a new section of the film, and that we needed to shoot more. This time around, we shot 4 days of interior shots in Los Angeles, with many new characters from Calvin's past. There was no way financially that we could fly everyone to Louisville, so we'd have to cheat California for Kentucky. Our cinematographer, Chandra, was unavailable at the time. But then we realized that it would actually be a good thing to have a slightly different look for this new section of the movie. Along the same way of thinking, I decided to shoot this portion differently as well. What we had shot earlier for the movie was very scripted, with minimal dialogue. But this was Calvin's past, when he was in a different world. So with this new cast, we had more of an outline of what we wanted, but then improvised most of the dialogue. And instead of grays and browns, we surrounded Calvin with bright colors. In fact, all of the colors of the movie had specific meanings, and although I'm not going to share all of them with you here, it may be fun to try and figure it out after watching the movie. We then went back to Kentucky and shot 2 days of exteriors to match what we had just shot. Calvin's look was much different here. He was in better shape, had short hair, and a tan. Once again, it was back to editing. Then we had to switch gears and worry about sound design, which was done in Los Angeles. After sitting on it for half a year, we finally discovered the only missing piece of the puzzle. We added one last character, played by Claire Balking. We shot one last day, had one last editing session, and had to create a completely brand new sound design. In the end, we had doubled our original small budget and shot 22 days in around 40 locations in 6 states. We screened Trail of Crumbs at several film festivals during 2008. It's been a long road, with hard work, determination, and sacrifice. We were lucky to have been assisted by many wonderful people along the way, and now are happy to share our story with a wider audience around the world.